In this video we're going to show you how to add the second button, but also how to use this button that we've already created to make our lives easier. So let's zoom back out and we'll fit to window. First thing we're going to do is to double click into the Mercury movie so we can select the button. Now we make sure that the button is selected, it's got the blue line around it, and then we need to right click and we need to duplicate the symbol. So we click on that. And we'll duplicate it, and what duplicate means is just make a copy of. And for this one we're going to call it Venus _ BTN for button, as this is going to be the button that we're going to use for the next planet. So we click OK. Now what we've done, we've made a copy of this button, and just to check which button we're using here, we can click on it and make sure it's selected, go to properties, and we can see that this is an instance of Venus _ button. So we need to now change this back to the Mercury button. So we make sure it's selected again, we right click and we swap the symbol and we select Mercury button and then OK. And now we can see that this is now an instance of Mercury button. So what we can do here is we can come back out of Mercury because we've made a copy of the button. We can now lock that layer and we can unlock Venus, as this is where we're going to put the new button. So we click on that keyframe. We need to find Venus, so we need to hide the other planets. Let's hide everything and then unhide Venus. There we are. So if you remember, we need to double click into the Venus movie, the SWF file. First thing we need to do is rename this layer, call it Venus. We add a new layer, rename that as button. And then instead of creating a new button, what we'll do here is we'll open up our library, so we click on library. Again, to access any of these panes down here, we go into the window menu, and to open up the library you'd select library. And what we're going to do, we're going to drag in the copy of the Mercury button that we made earlier, and we rename that Venus button, so we'll just click on that and drag it into roughly the right place. And there we can see it's a copy. So now we need to go into this button to change the text, obviously because it says Mercury at the moment. So we need to double click, then we simply select the text and we change that to Venus. Just make sure that that's still in the centre. And then we need to check the overstate, because we'll find now that we need to move the background and the info across the page. So if we select both of those, select the text and then hold shift and select the button background, and if we just drag it across the page so that it's in the right place, and then we can come out of this button and we can see that's how the button will load. If we come out of that scene, we can now see Venus movie there with the new button. If we unhide Mercury, we see that we need to make a few slight changes to Venus to align it to Mercury. So let's double click back into Venus and let's move the button so that it's in line with Mercury. Also, because we've got to put two more buttons over here, we need to make sure that this doesn't go over halfway of the page. So I'll need to move that slightly to the left. And that gives me enough space then to put these extra buttons in. Let's click into the button because we might have to move the info again. We go into the overstate and we can see that we do have to move it. Move it back. So at the start is in line with the Mercury button. Once we've done that, we can click out of the button And we need to put our filters back on to make it look the same as the other button. So we just make sure it's selected, go on to filters. First one we'll add is the bevel, change that to high, and then the second filter we'll add is the drop shadow filter, and again we'll change the colour, then click back in to change the alpha to make it transparent, change the blur to 10, quality to high, and then the final thing we need to do is change the information on this button. So let's double click back into it once more, go into the overstate, and you need to change the information on this part of the button to reflect the information that should be viewed as part of the Venus button. Don't forget you can go to Science Monster to find out the information. So here we can see that the average distance from the Sun is about 108,200,000 kilometers. So I can just go to my flash project, change it accordingly, just make sure it's sitting neatly in the block. Now I can come out of that button, come out of that Venus movie, and there we go, I have two buttons added to my project. Now the final thing we need to do is to add the action script to make sure that the button actually stops the planet in question when the user hovers over the button. So I need to double click into the movie, select the button, open up the actions panel, and do the same again as the last button. On, roll over, click after the bracket, stop, on roll out, play. We close down the actions panel and come out of the Venus movie, save our project, just make sure everything's locked and everything's visible, just save it again because I've just locked it, and then I can just go to publish it, and hopefully when I go to view it in my internet browser, the buttons work. And there we go, that one stops Venus and that one stops Mercury. So using the knowledge that you've just gained from the first two buttons, you now need to add a further two buttons for the remaining two inner planets and provide information for those.